Hey, hi there guys, it's Nigel here from Sax School. Welcome to our Sax School Live for this Monday. This is Sax School Live number 3. And I've got tons to talk about this week. I've got another fancy list. And this week we're going to talk about things like octave mechanisms, faulty octave mechanisms, and how you can diagnose problems with that. We're also going to look at tips for tactics, I suppose, for practicing if you're learning on more than one saxophone, like an alto, a tenor, or a soprano, or whatever. And also, we're going to have a bit of a chat about reeds and mouthpieces, and you know, when you're changing to a new mouthpiece, some tactics on how you can get around that and make it work better for you. But mostly, we're just going to have some fun having a chat about saxophone for half an hour or so. So, if you're new here, you can really help me out by sharing this on your Facebook feed too, just so we can let more people know about this Sax School Live thing that we're doing and get more people in the conversation. And also, hey, if you've not done this before, you probably already have. But if you've not liked our Facebook page, it's a good idea to do that too, because that way you'll get updated with all the new stuff that's going on in our Facebook page, and there's tons of stuff happening all the time. So, I really want to hear from you guys this week, so let me know if you're here, jump in and say hi in the chat, and don't forget, if you've got a question too, that's a great place to stick your question in, and I'm going to try and get to as many questions as I can. Actually, I've got Claire helping me here today too. I'll have a chat with her in a second, so if you don't hear back from me, you'll hear back from Claire, and we're going to try and catch as many questions as we can. Awesome. Right. If you don't know me, if we've not met each other before, so I'm Nigel, and I run this thing called Sax School, which is a really, it's a huge community now. We've got thousands of people learning saxophone. It's also really cool because Sax School is all about making the process of learning saxophone really fun. We've got hundreds of lessons. I'll show you actually. We've got hundreds of lessons inside Sax School. So you can really explore what it is that you want to learn, whether that's improvising or the blues or things like altissimo, all sorts of stuff. And then the videos themselves are also really clear. We use 2 cameras, you can always see my fingers, it's very visual, and there's tons of resources with all the lessons as well. So you can do things like download backing tracks and worksheets and all that sort of stuff. So it's really, really cool. Anyway, if you'd like to check it out, if you're not a member, there's actually a 30-day free trial, and that's at McGillmusic.com. So you can get in and kick the tires and see if it's the right thing for you. Okie dokie. So, tons of stuff to do today. If you didn't catch, or if you did see the last week's live stream, you know that we did a quiz, which was loads of fun. Wasn't it fun? Yeah?
Oh, it's funny, yeah, most people got it right. It was really fun.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, we had loads of response from our quiz last week. So I've got a quiz for you this week. So here's the quiz. And it's about something I'm going to talk about a bit later on. So, here's a question. If you know the answer to this, you can type it in the comments, right? So, which sax player from Tower of Power went on to play with Katy Perry and also run the Saturday Night Live Band? So, which Tower of Power tenor sax player went on to play with Katy Perry and run the Saturday Night Live Band? If you know the answer, stick it in the comments, and we get to the end of the session and I'm going to tell you what the answer is, who that mystery person is. Okie dokie. So look, before we get stuck in with answering questions, I thought I'd give you a bit of an update about what I've been up to this week, because it's been really busy here. I'm always busy making new lessons for Sax School. In fact, this week I've been busy making a couple of different things actually. I've been making a new lesson for a series that we've just launched this week called Moving On. And the idea of that really is it's a course that's for people, if you're a beginner and you've worked through the stage where you're playing your first tunes and learning your first notes, then the Moving On course is like the next step. You learn some really cool techniques and some cool tunes. And this week I put a new lesson in Sax School about alternate fingerings, which is really, really cool. But I've also been filming and writing some new lessons on duets, which are going to be coming out in a few weeks' time. And I've written some really fun duets that explore some different techniques and styles of playing that I think are essential for saxophone players to know. So I've been doing that sort of stuff. But let's say hi to Claire. So how are you doing, Claire? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, good. It's been busy this week, don't you think?
Really busy, yeah.
Yeah. And what's been going on in our Facebook group?
Oh, it's been brilliant actually. We've had loads of people sharing their videos this week about them playing. We've had some really great videos, and it's been lovely seeing how people are supporting each other and chipping in and commenting.
You know that video thing, Claire, I think that's awesome. So if you're not a Sax School member, we've got a private Facebook community for our members, and it's really active in there. And one of the things we encourage people to do is to share videos of themselves playing. Claire, isn't it amazing how many people are sharing videos in it? It's mental, isn't it?
Oh, it's really lovely, and it's great because everybody gives each other feedback and encouragement, and it's just a lovely community.
Yeah.
It's been really brilliant, actually. Yeah.
Although, did I see a video in there? Somebody on a boat.
Oh yeah, and that was Barry making us all really jealous, playing on a boat, beautiful blue sky,
he's
blue
crazy.
sea. We were all
crazy.
super jealous by that.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
Cool.
I think he gets a prize for
I think, yeah, he
funniest
might.
place to play the sax this week, I think.
If there was a prize for the sunniest place to play the saxophone, then I think Barry would be the
That would
winner.
be it, yeah.
So what else has been going on in the Facebook group?
Well, one of the things that I thought was absolutely fantastic was a saxophone member called Eileen, who actually posted a photograph of her completed 30-day practice challenge diary that she'd been doing.
Awesome.
It actually written across the top of the diary, she'd written that she bought her alto sax on the 29th of April. She had completed the challenge, and she actually said in her comments, she said, I can't believe how much progress I've made.
That's
which
mental.
was just lovely.
Yeah.
And all the members were just like really encouraging her, saying, oh, that was really great, and keep it up. So that was just brilliant.
Wow.
It just shows you what you can do.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, I like that. So we do this 30-day practice challenge inside Sax School, which is it's a thing we do. It's part of one of the community activities that we do, where you can download this planner and you go through the activity of practicing for 30 days, which is great for practice habits. But I love stories like that, Claire. It's brilliant. Actually, on the website, they've got a bunch of pictures of people who've done the 30-day challenge. I think it's brilliant. Awesome. Wow, that's cool. So, awesome. Well, should we get on with some questions?
Yeah.
Should we? Actually, I thought before we do the questions, I wanted to tell you about some new stuff that I've been checking out this week. And because every week I try and, I'm always listening to new albums and finding new players, and I think it's a really important part of being a musician. Really is exploring new things all the time and learning. So I'm checking out things from all different sorts of styles, and this week I've been checking out a new album by Tower of Power. Right, let me show you actually. So Tower of Power have been around since the 70s, I suppose. And I think they're mega. Even if it's not your cup of tea, I'd suggest you check these guys out. They've brought out a new album called Soul Side of Town. Now these guys have been around for a long time, so they've been playing on the road, touring for like 40 plus years. And so there's been tons of really great players that have gone through that band. And the current tenor player is this guy, Tom Politzer. He's the lead tenor player. There's 2 tenors and a baritone player in there, and then there's like 3 trumpets. And Tom Politzer is amazing, really great meaty sound. And if you want a role model of that sort of full-on funky fat tenor sound, then Tom Politzer is a great guy to check out. And on this new album, there's some really great playing. So Soul Side of Town, that's my top pick for this week. I've been listening to it non-stop all week, and I think you should definitely check that out. It's on Spotify and all sorts. But interesting thing about that band, so it's a funky band where everything's it's very 16th rhythms and complicated arrangements, but the band is so incredibly tight. And I think as a saxophone player, it's a great example of how to play in a saxophone or in a horn section where you're listening to everybody, everything's super accurate, and everything's really locked in, and that's a magic thing. Now, whether you're playing in a concert band or you're playing in a saxophone quartet, or even if you're just playing in a duet, you still need to have that concept of listening to other players, and those guys are the masters at it. One other thing I want to say about Tower of Power is I mentioned that lots of players have come through that band, and actually, just on that lead tenor chair, there's been a whole bunch of people who've gone on to do amazing things after that band. So it's kind of like a big breeding ground for amazing players. And I wrote a blog post about Tower of Power and all those saxophone players, which is on my blog. And if you check out the show notes for this Sax School Live, you can find it on there, or just go to mcgillmusic.com and look at the blog. But it's a really interesting read, because when you look down the list of all the people that have been in that band, and they've all gone off to do these amazing things, touring with amazing people and recording lots of stuff. So really, really cool. So how are we getting on, Claire? Have we had a few people join us? Have we got some people?
Got loads of people joining us, yeah, loads of really great comments as well. Yeah, people saying they're going to check out the album, sounds good.
Brilliant. Awesome, okay, cool. Well, I think it's good to check out new stuff. That's what keeps things inspiring and keeps it fresh. Okay, so let's crack on with some questions. And don't forget, if you've got a question, put it in the comments in the chat, and we'll try to get to any other questions as well. Also, if you've got any feedback on what I'm going to be talking about, then I'd love to hear that as well. Okay, so questions. Now, I had a really good question about octave mechanism from Pete Riley. And Pete was saying to me, he's having trouble with his lower notes. He's saying he can get a B and an A, but when he goes down to the G, it pops up the octave, and then all the notes below the G, the F, E, and the D, are all up in that higher octave. He says, am I doing something wrong? And I can imagine he's super frustrated, because if you're new to saxophone, that is really frustrating. And actually, even if you've been playing for a while, but you've never had that problem, when it does happen to you, it'll drive you crazy. And I have had it happen to me even in a gig situation, like when you're just about to go on stage and you blow through your saxophone and then nothing's working. So it's good for all of us, regardless of what level you're at, to know about this. So what I suspect is going on here is a problem with the octave mechanism. And there's a couple of interesting things that go on with the octave mechanism. So, you know, octave keys at the back here. But when we press that octave key, we've got this bit, well, we've got our G fingers down. We've got the top key here moving up and down. But we've also got inside, there's a second octave vent or pad that moves, and that's up in here, right at the top of the body of the saxophone. I don't know if you can see it on there. Maybe if I go right in close like that, you might be able to see that other one moving in there. Now, if you're having a problem where those notes below G are not working for you, 90% of the time it's because this pad at the top is not closing. And that happens if this key, the octave key on the neck, gets bent. And it's really, really easy for that to happen. Sometimes you can just be in a hurry and pick it up like this, and that will bend the key, you know. It's really easy to do. It's also pretty easy to fix it as well. But I'll show you what I mean. So let's say, for example, see if I can make my saxophone do this sound. By the way, I did a video on this with Steve Crow, who's like one of the top repairers in England. He's a master saxophone repairer. And I'll put a link to that video. It's on my YouTube channel, but there's a link to it in the show notes. So if you want to get a more detailed, better explanation than what I can do about this, then you want to check out that video. So check out the show notes. Okay, so... But if this isn't closing... Everything goes up the next octave. And it all comes down to this pad. So the first thing I would suggest, and this goes for Pete, it goes for everybody else, is make sure that this is closing. So when you've got your octave key on, and you're pressing that down, it should lift off, and then when you take your thumb off here, it should close all the way down. And if it doesn't, you're going to need to make this C closed a little bit more, and it's simply just grabbing it and bending it like this. Feels a bit weird bending your saxophone, but that's the way it's done. So check out the video in the show notes and look here. If this is not sealing, then that video will explain to you how you can fix that problem. It's actually pretty easy. If that's not sorting it out for you, then it could be a problem with the other octave vent, and that's a little bit more complicated. So in that situation, I'd probably suggest going and talking to a repairer. It's something that they'll be able to fix pretty quickly. There's lots of complicated linkages in here, and if it can't be fixed with this part, then you really want to get someone to look at that part for you. I hope that makes sense. 90% of the, probably 99% of the time, it can be fixed with this key here, just by bending it back down so that when you do press down your octave key, it opens, and when you release, it closes properly. But if you know that that's where the problem is, then you can recognize it when it happens to you. Does that make sense? If you've had a problem like that on your saxophone, let me know in a comment too, because I'd be interested to know. If most of our sax players have come across that at some point. So let me know, Claire, if anybody else has had that problem. Octave mechanisms are a funny thing, and it's definitely something as sax players we need to know about. But I had another good question actually from John Carlo. Now John is a really active member of our sax school community and a really good player actually. And he asked me a question this week which I thought was a good one for us to share on this Sax School Live. So John was asking me, he was saying, I'm wondering why after just 2 days of starting on a slant sig 7, which is a Theowane slant sig, and that's actually the mouthpiece that I'm playing on here. So he's playing on a size 7 on a slant sig mouthpiece. He says after just a couple days on that, I went back to my Selmer S80 C-Star, which is a normal sort of conventional mouthpiece, and the sound on the Selmer could only be described as puny. Puny, okay. Why? So I think what John's getting at here is he's made the transition from his more standard C-star mouthpiece, and he's moved over onto the slant sig mouthpiece. And then when he's gone back to the original mouthpiece, it feels completely different and the sound is different. This is a really common thing. If you've ever experienced this sort of thing, let me know in a comment, because this is something that most of us, when you're changing mouthpieces, will experience. So the main reason, I think, for this, it just comes down to, your body adapting. The slant sig and a size 7 is a much wider opening than the Selma C-star. It's a bigger mouthpiece, and it's going to feel differently in your mouth. And I'll bet if you've just got one of those new mouthpieces, you're going to be spending loads of time, John, playing on that mouthpiece to try and get the sort of sound you want. So in the process of doing that, you're developing your muscles in your embouchure. You're changing the way that your throat is, and you're concentrating on the sound with that shaped mouthpiece. But when you go back to your old mouthpiece, which is a smaller opening and a different sort of chamber, it's going to feel completely different to you. And if you had the same embouchure for the bigger mouthpiece on the smaller one, then it's going to sound completely different. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's so important to try and stick with one mouthpiece and find the best sound that you can on that, as opposed to swapping and changing, which some people do. It's a bit of a mistake because you need to make so many changes to your embouchure. If you've ever had that problem, then let me know in the comment, because I think that it's something, if you've never changed mouthpieces before, it can seem a bit unusual. How are we getting on the comments over there, Claire?
Yeah, some people are saying that they've watched your video about the octave key and it's really helped them when they've had problems with that, so that's really great to hear. A couple of people commenting about mouthpiece issues, going back to what you're saying about sort of sticking with the same one, so that's really interesting that people have had the same issue as well.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, we all like to change mouthpieces, but it's a process. So changing mouthpieces takes a lot of effort and a lot of changes in your body that you may not be aware of. I would guess that that's the reason that you're experiencing your puny sound, John. But also the other thing to think about is the combination of mouthpiece and reed. And I mentioned that we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I guess what I wanted to say mostly on that topic is, and I mentioned this before in other videos, that if you're changing to a new mouthpiece, you can't expect the same reed is going to fit your new mouthpiece that fitted your old mouthpiece. So you really need to go through the whole process of finding a mouthpiece that suits your new mouthpiece, just like you did with your original mouthpiece. And on that note, it's not just about the thickness of the reed. So perhaps you might be playing on a 3 on your C-star, John, but you might find that a 2.5 works better on your new slant sig, because it's a bigger mouthpiece. So it's finding that thickness that suits your mouthpiece. But the other thing is exploring different cuts of reeds, because all different manufacturers, they shape the profile of their reeds are slightly different. Sometimes even the sort of cane stock that they use is different. So they all perform in different ways, and they're going to give you slight variations in sound. So it's really, really important to explore lots of different brands. We've talked about this before in these sessions, but if you can find a way to do that, then you definitely should.
We've had some comments, actually, questions about reeds. I just thought it might be Chris mentioned, he's asked a comment, he said, what makes some reeds sound raspy or make the horn sound like it has a vibration on the top end, but changing to another reed makes it sound perfect?
Yeah,
Could that be?
No, that's an excellent question. And, again, that comes down to the profile of the reed. So it's exactly what I was talking about a minute ago. Who was that from again?
Chris.
From Chris, yeah. So Chris, that's what's going on there, Chris. It could be, you could have this issue, Chris, with two identical reeds from the same manufacturer on the same size, because unfortunately cane reeds are all slightly different. You never get two cane reeds that are identical. So sometimes you buy a box of 10 size 2.5 blue box Van Doren reeds, and 5 of them are going to play completely different to the other 5. So that does happen. But more commonly, you're going to notice a big difference if you bought a size 2.5 from a Van Doren and a size 2.5 from a Lavoz or a Hemke or any other brand. A marker reed, for example. And the reason is, Chris, it's like I was just mentioning, that the profile of the reeds are different. So they're cut in a different shape and they respond in a different way. Same thing, actually, even if you look within the range of reeds from one manufacturer. So Van Doren make their blue box reeds, they make their Java, they make their ZZs, they make all these different reeds have got a different shape, even though they're from the same manufacturer. So they perform and sound in a different way. So, any other questions over there?
Just a comment, Claire commented the same thing, that she'd found that when she changed a different reed with a different mouthpiece, new mouthpiece, changed the reed, found it was much better. Something we touched on actually the other week, comment about synthetic reeds versus traditional cane reeds. I know we picked up on that the other week.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hot topic these days because there's some really good synthetic reeds on. And I'll be honest with you. So I'm actually a Leger endorsee. I'm one of their artists, and it didn't come about because. It came about because I actually went and tried some Leger reeds, and I loved them, and I bought a bunch of them, and then I got in touch and I told them how much I love them, and then now I'm an endorsee of them. I do think genuinely that they're great, and every saxophone that I have has a Leger reed on it. But after 25 years of playing, I could never ever get on with synthetic reeds. So I actually didn't like any synthetic reeds up until I tried the Leger reeds. So I'm not a massive, I love the Leger reeds, but I struggle to get on with any of the other synthetic reeds. Now, some people out there, some of you guys probably do love other synthetic brands other than Leger. And it all comes down to personal preference. And that depends on your shape of your mouth, depends on the sort of playing that you're doing. So, and your preference of sound as well. But the benefits I see of the synthetic reeds is just, for me, it's just consistency. That's the main thing. I know every day when I come up and pick up my saxophone and start practicing, it's going to behave in the same way, and I don't have to spend a big portion of my practice time preparing reeds. And the Leger ones are the first ones that actually satisfy me for the sound. But you need to experiment yourself. There's lots of good ones out there to try, see what they work, see if they work for you. Rightio, cool. Hey, we've got another good question here now. Okay, so I kind of changed tack on this question. I'd mentioned last week that we're going to talk about learning two different saxophones, and in the process, in the last couple of days, I got a great email that came through from Jean McRae by email. They sent me this message. I thought this was really cool. So Jean's saying, I've recently acquired a Sopranino, which I personally think is very brave. Sopranino is so soprano is the straight one, or sometimes bent, but Sopranino is the tiniest one, super small saxophone, and actually I think they're quite difficult to play. So, Jean says, I've got a Sopranino and I'm interested in advice on how to make the high register sound fuller. Now that's a really good question, because if you are changing to any other saxophone, let's say you started off as an alto player and then you got yourself a tenor, or a tenor and you got yourself a Barry or soprano, or any other saxophone that you add into your library of instruments, you're going to struggle to get the sound the way you want it, the same as, particularly if you've been playing the other instrument for a while. So for example, I started off as an alto player all the way through high school, all the way into university. I was a alto player. When I was doing symphony work, I was an alto player. And then in my early 20s, I changed to tenor. And now I'd actually say I'm probably more of a tenor player than an alto player. But I had to go through a process when I made that transition. So just like I had to, all of you guys, the same thing. And just like Jean as well, changing to that Sopranino, it's a process that you need to go through. And the most important point I want to make is that you've got to treat every single saxophone as its own instrument. So that means just like you did with your first saxophone, you need to go through a process of working on your tone and working on technique and developing your sound and having a concept of the sound that you're going for as well. So I'd say to Jean, why is my sound on the Sopranino not full on the high register? A, because it's very difficult on the Sopranino. Sorry about that, Jean, but that's just the way it is. But B, because you're going to have to spend some time working on long tones, just like you did on your other saxophones, in order to build up the quality of the sound. Thinking about open embouchure, open throat rather, nice round embouchure, good breath support, finding that right combination of reeds and mouthpieces as well. And going through the whole process to define or to discover your own sound on that new instrument. Hope that makes sense. If you've struggled with that, let me know in a comment, because I'll be interested to know as well. How are we going over there in the comments there, Claire?
Just thinking on the same topic that you've just mentioned there, an interesting comment here from Barry. He says, I returned to Barry after the baritone, presumably, after a slight layoff of 54 years. He said, wow. I now have a restored King Zephyr, love it in general, but the top register is much too sharp. Is it me, the horn, the mouthpiece, which is an M5, or the guts, Barry says?
Oh, that's a good question. All right, cool. Well, Great question, and hey, congratulations for coming back to saxophone. That is fantastic. Okay, so, well, you know, I think always if it's an older horn like that, it's a good idea to get it checked out and make sure that it's in good playing order. Just like if you had an old car, you'd go and get that serviced and make sure that everything's working. And that gives you the peace of mind that that's not going to cause a problem. I think if you're new to Barry, then Barry has its own difficulties, just like soprano and sopranino. It's just on the other end of the scale. So whereas soprano is a really small mouthpiece, Barry's a really big mouthpiece, and it can feel, if you're not an experienced baritone player, then it can feel quite awkward to get your embouchure shape right, to think about the shape of your throat, and to get the sort of sound that you're going for. So similarly, you need to spend some time working with your tuner, getting your mouth position right. So you want to experiment with how much mouthpiece you're using. Long tones with a tuner and gradually working up into high register. So it could also be that if you're still getting used to that saxophone, that you also need to experiment with where the mouthpiece is placed on the neck. Maybe if you're really sharp up the top, you know, maybe you need to pull it out and lower the pitch overall, see how that affects your lower register, and find an average place so that you can keep the whole range in tune. So there's lots of different moving parts in there. Start by making sure your saxophone's in good order, spend some time getting your mouthpiece and reed combo right, and then working on your tone and intonation to build that up gradually, Barry, and then before you know it, you'll be playing awesome. Cool. Hey Claire, I'm enjoying all these questions that we're getting. We're getting loads, aren't we?
Yeah, we're getting some great comments. Susie Pearson's just commented that she's moved to tenor last year, and it's taken her a while, but she thinks like she's getting there after 25 years on an alto. So
wow,
it's
really?
try new things, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah. And it's the same thing. So that transition, even after such a long time, you still need to find your sound. You know, and it's the same. I play flute and clarinet as well, and it's the same with that. You've got to treat it like it's its own instrument, spend the time really getting it down. I remember once I was going off to do a job in America where I had to play piccolo, and there's going to be lots of piccolo on this job. And I've been traveling. I went back to Cairns. I was home in Australia, where I come from, for a month before I went out to America to do this job. And I spent the whole month just playing piccolo all day, which drove everybody around me crazy. But, you know, I got there eventually. But I had to go through that same process, right? Work out what I want to sound like, get the intonation right, get the technique right, get the sound. So it's the same process. There's no shortcut, unfortunately. Okay, so we're almost out of time, but I've got a couple things that I wanted to tell you. First of all, well, thanks for all your comments and everything today. It's been brilliant. I've got to tell you guys about the quiz answer. I'm going to get to that in a second. But I had an idea of giving you guys a bit of a challenge for this week. So, challenges are fun, aren't they? Give you something to think about. So I thought for this week, something that might be a good idea to think about in your practice is to experiment with the idea of dividing up your practice into 3 separate sections. So when you think about sitting down to do your practice tomorrow or whenever your next practice session is, see if you can consciously divide up your practice into 3 different elements. And the first element is going to be like a warming up, technique and sort of general, that sort of maintenance type stuff. The second section is going to be working on something new, something that's challenging you. It could be a new piece, it could be a new lesson out of sax school, it could be a new study, or it could be, you know, a whole new tune that you want to play along with the backing track. And then the third part of your practice is going to be doing something fun. So it might be a tune that you're already familiar with, that you already know, but you want to run through it and maybe get ready to get that up to a performance standard. So if you've got, let's say you had 30 minutes to practice, you could divide that into 10 minutes for each section and think about what you're doing in each of those sections. It's even better if you write it down in a little diary so that you can go back at the end of the week and see each day what you practiced on and what you put in those 3 elements. And if you break down your practice like that, then it really makes it easier for you to track your progress. You'll find that you'll be more productive in your practice time as well. And I think also by measuring the amount of time that you're practicing, it just makes the whole process of learning much easier, because you know you only got 10 minutes of doing scales and long tones before you can get onto that other thing, which is going to be more fun. So have a go at that. We'll have a talk about this next week and see how you got on with it. If you want some more tips, by the way, about this sort of thing, because I think understanding the science of practicing is really important, and it makes all the difference between somebody who makes fantastic progress and somebody who struggles to make progress. So if you really want to move ahead with your playing and progress fast, then you need to have a good strategy with how you practice. I wrote a little book about this actually, called The Ultimate Guide to Practicing Saxophone, which is all about that. It's only a short read, it's like 30 pages, but it breaks down all the stuff you need to know about this, getting into the science of how you practice, and I think it'll really help you. So we'll put a link in the comments here, and if you look at the show notes for this session, then you'll find it in there as well. Definitely recommend it. All right, so hey Claire, have we had some people answering our quiz?
We've totally stumped them. We've beaten them.
Oh,
we've completely
yes!
beaten them. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I even gave them a little prompt. I said, anybody got a quiz answer? Silence.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, actually, here's me thinking that this is going to be too easy. I thought everyone would get that. Okay, so just to recap then, if you were unsure, the question was, who's a sax player from Tower of Power? They're probably all going, who's Tower of Power? Who's a sax player from Tower of Power who went on to play with Katy Perry and also is the musical director for Saturday Night Live? Now, there is a bit of a trick to this answer, actually. The answer is this guy called Lenny Pickett. I should have a picture. I should show you a picture. Lenny Pickett's a legend. He was like the first superstar sax player from Tower of Power. And in fact, that blog post that I mentioned about all the players from Tower of Power, I mentioned him in that. Lenny Pickett was in the band in the 70s, and he's honestly recorded with hundreds of, or just about everybody you could think of. He's one of those session guys that played on everything. He's an amazing saxophone player. And for a number of years now, he's been the musical director for Saturday Night Live. And actually, I hung out with him in New York a few years ago. He's a genuinely nice guy and a super talented player. Now, in that Katy Perry tune, Last Friday Night, is that it? He is the guy that recorded the saxophone. And it's funny because I was looking at it today. In the video for that song, it's actually Kenny G in the video. How random is that? But he's not the guy that recorded it. He's in the video, maybe just because he's got crazy hair, I don't know. But and maybe he's better looking than Lenny Pickett. Anyway, Lenny Pickett's the guy that recorded the album. So if you want to check him out, I'll definitely Google him. Go check out the blog post that I wrote all about that Tower of Power and the saxophone players. It's in the show notes. And then Google Lenny Pickett, because he's a monster player and he's got the control of the altissimo like no one I've ever seen. Amazing. Okay, well, what do you reckon, Claire? It's been a pretty good session, eh?
Brilliant, really great, yeah.
Yeah, lots of great feedback. So thanks to all of you guys for being involved and sticking around today. Really appreciate it. These sessions are all about sharing some saxophone knowledge and having fun with you guys, having a good conversation. So don't forget, you can really help me out by sharing this on your Facebook feed. That helps me to let more people know about these things. And also, like I was mentioning before, don't forget to like the Facebook page. That way you'll know about the other things that's going on. There's tons going on our Facebook page here for non-members and members. One final thing too is if you are not a Sax School member and you want to go in and have a look, it's free. I'd definitely suggest going and taking a look. You can get a 30-day trial at McGillmusic.com. Actually, I'm really open. You know what? You get the trial, it's free, and you get access to everything inside Sax School. So it's a great opportunity for going and checking stuff out. Okay, well, I hope you have a brilliant week. Get some practice in. Think about those 3 sections for your practicing this week. And I hope you will join us next Monday. We've got a bunch of new, in fact, I'll tell you what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about microphone technique. We're going to talk about saxophone mutes. What are they? Is there such a thing? And we're also going to talk a little bit about when you should get your saxophone looked at by a repairer. So have an awesome week. Keep practicing hard. And I will catch you next Monday.